All right, happy to share with you about our experiences with Project Joy at UC Health in Colorado. I thought I'd start out with this framework, part of the pre-reading for the conference, Patty Sengstack's position paper that I was very pleased to be able to assist with around the 6 domains of burden. Project Joy at UC Health is about nursing documentation, inpatient nursing documentation. So we focused on what we could actually control, which of course is the self-imposed part of burden, the we've done it to ourselves piece. I'll point out that while usability is in so many ways in the hands of our EHR vendors, when we overbuild, we make a bad situation significantly worse. I'm going to start by talking about our outcomes to inspire you to listen closely to some of what we've done. And in such a short talk today, I'm only able to describe a little bit. There's quite a bit more to this. So if others are wanting to undertake this work and want my whole playbook, please reach out.
Bonnie, I'm not sure that your slides are advancing. It looks like we're still on the title slide, just to let you know.
Okay, let me see what I need to do differently here. How are we now?
Okay, great. We're on, yeah, it's moving now. Great.
Thanks for calling that out. Okay. So, took us about 2 years to get to this point where we were able to eliminate almost 500 flow sheet rows entirely from our system for inpatient nursing documentation. And we're able to measure that that is saving 18 minutes spent in flow sheets per 12-hour RN shift. So that's a 21% reduction, getting us somewhere near that 25% that we're going for here. I won't speak about it here, but these are very objective, comprehensive data from our EHR vendor, not based on time and motion studies for 18 minutes. And at the size of our health system, that adds up to quite a few hours, worth over $2.8 million of time that the nurse is giving back to patient care. And of course, increasing the joy in being a nurse because we became nurses not to enter data. We have a workflow analyzer tool also provided by our vendor that lets us quantify the number of clicks saved. So UC Health nurses' fingers are saving 360 million clicks a year. And to give you a sense of where that scale is coming from, here's just a little bit about our health system. I don't want to say much here other than to point to the size, and also that we're pretty invested in this stuff, you know, as reflected by our pursuit of HIMSS stage 7. Now, the backstory here is that we got into this work in part because we wanted to focus forward beyond where we are today. Innovation being one of our key strategic imperatives for our health system in recent years. We were seeking to be able to marry documentation with the doing so that there's no time spent on documentation using new technology. Again, a great interest of mine, something we could talk about offline, but we quickly got told you need to first deconstruct nursing documentation from the mess that it is and find out what actually is truly needed in the EHR. So let's talk about how we achieved this kind of joy. It starts out with flow sheets looking something like this terribly messy and overflowing, overbuilt closet. And when you have a closet like this, who do you want but Marie Kondo? And her process, as some of you may know, is take every item out, group by group, every shirt. Put every shirt out in your visual field, pick each one up, ask, does it spark joy? And then figure out which ones you're keeping. Okay, so that's not going to work for documentation. But what we did do is develop guiding principles and inclusion criteria. That is, criteria to satisfy inclusion in nursing documentation. And want to thank HCA, great timing, coming right after Dan, and Jane Engelbright for sharing that early on. I have given you our guiding principles and inclusion criteria, and actually a lot more in the addendum to the slide deck. I don't want to do death by PowerPoint and go over it here, other than to say that's how we got it done. So end result, we hope, is a closet that looks a lot more like this. It's not just that there's less in it, but that there is a method to the madness. We have deployed functionality in our flow sheets that we previously were not using to try to create a more patient-specific, patient-centered flow sheet experience for the RN. Because one of the difficulties is knowing which of the many flow sheet rows you actually need to address. It's sometimes easier for nursing to just do all of them than to figure out what's required. But going from the one to the other, right, that is really a heavy lift. And with this work, there's some significant risk of injury. So one risk of injury is to the organization. If we were to have deleted flow sheet rows that turned out, oh dear, we really needed that in order to keep our level 1 accreditation for trauma or what have you. So there's that. There's also the risk of failure. We had to invest heavily to do this work, and we needed it to be successful. So that meant we needed to make enough change to really justify what we invested. Jane Engelbreit, also Patty Sengstack, and other leaders in this movement I was able to speak with them early on and really emphasize the key importance of the chief nurse executive. There are crucial nursing philosophical issues that go on in this work, as well as the need to resource it and to, snowplow barriers out of the way. When we first came to it, it kind of felt like this. So many nursing specialties, so many different activities within our EHR, and it was directly from the chief nurse who said, you're starting with med-surg nursing so that we can get the biggest bang for our buck, and who made the resources available to bring those subject matter expert nurses to the boardroom table, literally. In fact, they drove sometimes from across the Front Range to meet up in our near Denver boardroom at the Academic Medical Center. And they cleaned it up to say, hey, this is where we're going to focus in the first year. These 2 core flow sheets, and it's going to be RN documentation only. And I want to stress that there was some courage required here, because this meant that for that first year, med-surg nursing documentation was out of alignment with emergency, with critical care, everywhere. Also, even the RNs and the CNAs working on the same unit had to tolerate a level of misalignment until we were able to get to more flow sheets. By the end of year 2, we had addressed a lot more and moved a lot faster after that first year. And what's in pink is what we're working on now when COVID allows it. Part of the success here, I think, was in developing these teams within Project Joy, and I'm just going to mention them right quick, but again, there's more in the addendum. We've got the clinical subject matter experts. They're really the heart and soul, the core of Project Joy. Then there's an important group I call the guardrails. So this includes legal, quality, regulatory, representatives from our various certification programs like Level 1, like a stroke, et cetera. That is the largest group within Project Joy, and frankly, they don't get to come to the table hardly ever. We have a couple of their representatives who are often meeting with the subject matter experts, but for the most part, they do review after the fact and let us know, are we going to stay on the mountain here, or are we going to drive off? So sometimes we have to put things back in that we thought we could get rid of. Our senior leaders, in particular, the chief nursing officer group, is key here, and they are the final decision-making authority. So in the end, we can blame all things on them, but the truth is they can't get that into the weeds. So there's an art to recognizing what are the more controversial issues that need to get percolated all the way up for their attention. And I do that by SBAR to them a number of times a year. We also have a design team. So that includes clinical informaticists and a system architect from our EHR team. And what they do is take the content decisions that the subject matter experts speak to and the sort of blue sky visions of what the subject matter experts say they really want, and they come up with the best designs that we can offer based on the current EHR functionality. And they keep in close contact with our vendor to know what's on the roadmap, what might be coming soon. Maybe there are things that we hold off on a little bit until we have that new functionality. Their designs ultimately are approved by the subject matter nurses. The build effort is significant. Our build team has touched thousands and thousands of records to get this done. We address every flow sheet row and every custom list choice across the flow sheets we've done. And then there's
we have 1 minute
to coordinate. So want to sum up by saying we need to scale this way larger than the size of a closet, which is why I'm so excited about the work that I think this group convening here can address. I'm going to call out a couple of places that I've not been able to address from within the health system based work. Joint commissions, CMS are big. There are things that are asked for that frankly don't make sense to us in terms of the way that they get asked for. That's a whole conversation right there. I also call out the Poor American Heart Association here, just to say that those certificate of excellence programs also drive some of the burden and drive us to have to document some things in ways that don't necessarily make sense to us. Part of that being the concept that care that's ordered and care that's implemented may be different. And I think if we're worried about orders not being implemented, we should worry about that instead of nursing documentation. And then the last little icon here for our vendors. Obviously, our vendors have to help us with the usability issues. A project like Project Joy can only go so far. And I'll end with some of the photos of our nurses. Thanks.